Hey girls, good morning. I don't know what is up with me, but I can't seem to sleep enough the last few days. I didn't wake up until almost 10:30. That is not like me. I'm a 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock waker, but I don't know, I'm just run down for some reason. So I'm trying, I woke up this morning at 4 and I thought, no, it's way too early to get up. So I turned on a Marco Polo group. Like, if I were to turn on music, I'd never be able to sleep. But I turned on a Marco Polo group, I'm like 2,000 behind it, and it went back to like July. And I just hit play. I slept like a baby. I don't know why that helps me sleep, but it does. So, anyway, I thought I would come outside and enjoy my coffee this morning because I never, ever, ever sit out here. Is the connection okay? Is the streaming okay? I got something in my eyeball. Because I don't know why I never come out here and sit. I have this beautiful table, I have this beautiful umbrella above me, and I never ever sit out here. I just don't. I don't know why. And so I thought today it's, getting to be fall-ish, and it's perfection weather right now outside, and I thought, I am going to go sit outside and do devotions. What is it? 73. It's just absolutely beautiful. So, anyway, here I am. Better late than never, I guess. All right, hopefully you guys can hear me okay. If the connection's not good, let me know and I'll go inside, but I feel like it should be okay out here. It shows me having complete, full connection. All right, we are on September 14th. The temple's dedication, Ezra 6:14b through 18, 515 BC. The temple was finally finished, as had been commanded by the God of Israel, and decreed by Cyrus Darius Artaxerxes, the king of Persia. The temple was completed on March 12th, during the 6th year of King Darius's reign. The temple of God was then dedicated with great joy because the people of Israel, the priests, the Levites, and the rest of the people who had returned from exile. During the dedication ceremony for the temple of God, 100 young bulls, 200 rams, and 400 male lambs were sacrificed, and 12 male goats were presented as a sin offering for the 12 tribes of Israel. Then the priests and Levites were divided into their various divisions to serve at the temple of God in Jerusalem as prescribed in the book of Moses. Celebration of Passover, Ezra 6:19 through 22, 515 BC. On April 22nd, the returned exiles celebrated Passover. The priests and Levites had purified themselves and were ceremonially clean, so they slaughtered the Passover lamb for all the returned exiles, for their fellow priests, and for themselves. The Passover meal was eaten by the people of Israel who had returned from exile, and by the others in the land who had turned from their corrupt practices to worship the Lord, the God of Israel. They celebrated the festival of unleavened bread for 7 days. There was great joy throughout the land because the Lord had caused the king of Assyria to be favorable to them, so that he helped them rebuild the temple of God, the God of Israel. Opposition under King Xerxes, Ezra 4:6. Sorry. I'm still half asleep. 486 BC. Years later, when Xerxes began his reign, the enemies of Judah wrote a letter of accusation against the people of Judah and Jerusalem. Esther's story took place in Persia during the reign of King Xerxes. The King's Banquet, Esther 1:1 through 9. These events happened in the days of King Xerxes, who reigned over 127 provinces, stretching from India to Ethiopia. At that time, Xerxes ruled his empire from his royal throne at the fortress of Susa. In the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all of his nobles and officials. He invited all the military officers of Persia and Media, as well as the princes and nobles of the provinces. The celebration lasted 180 days. Can you imagine a party lasting that long? I'm ready at 9 o'clock for a party to be over. I'm like, it's 9, go home. These people are partying for 180 days. A tremendous display of the opulent wealth of his empire and the pomp and splendor of his majesty. When it was all over, the king gave a banquet for all the people from the greatest to the least who were in the fortress of Susa. It lasted for 7 days and was held in the courtyard of the palace garden. The courtyard was beautifully decorated with white cotton curtains and blue hangings, which were fastened with white linen cords and blue ribbons to silver rings embedded in marble pillars. Gold and silver couches stood on a mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and other costly stones. Drinks were served in gold goblets of many designs, and there was an abundance of royal wine, reflecting the king's generosity. By edict of the king, no limits were placed on the drinking, for the king had instructed all his palace officials to serve each man as much as he wanted. At the same time, Queen Vashti gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. Queen Vashti deposed. Esther 1:10-22. On the 7th day of the feast, when King Xerxes was in high spirits because of the wine, he told the 7 eunuchs who attended him, Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zether, and Carcass. How would you like the name Carcass? To bring Queen Vashti to him with the royal crown on her head. He wanted the nobles and all the other men to gaze on her beauty, for she was a very beautiful woman. But when they conveyed the king's order to Queen Vashti, she refused to come. This made the queen furious, and he burned with anger. He immediately consulted with his advisors, who knew all the Persian laws and customs, for he had asked their advice. The names of these men were Karshena, Shether, Admatha, Tarshish, Maris, Marsena, and Memucan, 7 nobles of Persia and Media. They met with the king regularly and held the highest position in the empire. What must be done to Queen Vashti? The king demanded. What penalty does the law provide for a queen who refuses to obey the king's orders, properly sent through his eunuchs? Memucan answered the king and his nobles. Queen Vashti was wronged, not only the king, but also every noble citizen throughout your empire. Women everywhere will begin to despise their husbands when they learn that Queen Vashti has refused to appear before the king. Before this day is out, the wives of all the king's nobles throughout Persia and Media will hear what the queen did and start treating their husbands the same way. There will be no end to their contempt and anger. So if it please the king, we suggest that you issue a written decree, a law of the Persians and Medes that cannot be revoked. It should order that Queen Vashti be forever banished from the presence of the king, and that the king should choose another queen more worthy than she. When the decree is published throughout the king's vast empire, husbands everywhere, whatever their rank, will receive the proper respect from their wives. The king and his nobles thought this made good sense, so he followed Memucan's counsel. He sent letters to all parts of the empire, to each province in its own script and language, proclaiming that every man should be the ruler in his home and should say whatever he pleases. Esther becomes queen, Esther 2:1-14, 479 BC. But after Xerxes' anger had subsided, he began to think about Vashti and what she had done and the decree he had made. So his personal attendants suggested, "Let us search the empire to find beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint agents in each province to bring these beautiful young women into the royal harem at the fortress of Susa. Haggai, the king's eunuch in charge of the harem, will see that they are all given beauty treatments. After that, the young woman who most pleases the king will be made queen instead of Vashti." This advice was very appealing to the king, so he put a plan into place. I have to be honest. I do not want to go to the king. I don't want to be the king's girl. But I could stand some time in a tent getting some beauty treatments. At that time, there was a Jewish man in the fortress of Susa, whose name was Mordecai, son of Jair. He was from the tribe of Benjamin, and he was a descendant of Kish and Shimei. His family had been among those who, with King Jehoiachin of Judah, had been exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. This man had a very beautiful and lovely young cousin, Hadassah, who was also called Esther. When her father and mother died, Mordecai adopted her into his family and raised her as his own daughter. As a result of the king's decree, Esther, along with many other young women, was brought into the king's harem at the fortress of Susa and placed in Haggai's care. Haggai was very impressed with Esther and treated her kindly. He quickly ordered a special menu for her and provided her with beauty treatments. He also assigned her 7 maids specially chosen from the king's palace, and he moved her and the maids into the best place in the harem. Esther had not told anyone of her nationality and family background because Mordecai had directed her not to do so. Every day, Mordecai would take a walk near the courtyard of the harem to find out about Esther and what was happening to her. Before each young woman was taken into the king's bed, she was given the prescribed 12 months of beauty treatments. 6 months with oil and myrrh, followed by 6 months with special perfumes and ointments. She's pickled by the end of it, but 12 months of beauty treatments. When it was time for her to go to the king's palace, she was given her choice of whatever clothing or jewelry she wanted to take from the harem. That evening, she was taken to the king's private room, and the next morning she was brought to the second harem, where the king's wives lived. There she would be under the care of Sheshgaz, the king's eunuch in charge of the concubines. She would never go to the king again unless he had specifically enjoyed her and requested her by name. Esther 2:15-20. Esther was the daughter of Abihail, who was Mordecai's uncle. Mordecai had adopted his younger cousin, Esther. When it was Esther's turn to go to the king, she accepted the advice of Haggai, the eunuch in charge of the harem. She asked for nothing except what he suggested, and she was admired by everyone who saw her. Esther was taken to King Xerxes at the royal palace in early winter of the 7th year of his reign, and the king loved Esther more than any of the other young women. He was so delighted with her that he set the royal crown on her head and declared her queen instead of Vashti. To celebrate the occasion, he gave a great banquet in Esther's honor for all his nobles and officials, declaring a public holiday for the provinces and giving generous gifts to everyone. Even after all the young women had been transferred to the second harem and Mordecai had become a palace official, Esther continued to keep her family background and nationality a secret. She was still following Mordecai's directions just as she did when she lived in his home. Mordecai's loyalty to the king, Esther 2:21-23. One day, as Mordecai was on duty at the king's gate, 2 of the king's eunuchs, Bigthana and Teresh, who were the guards at the door of the king's private quarters, became angry at King Xerxes and plotted to assassinate him. But Mordecai heard about the plot and gave the information to Queen Esther. She then told the king about it and gave Mordecai credit for the report. When an investigation was made and King Mordecai's story was found to be true, the 2 men were impaled on a sharpened pole. This book is just full of exciting things. Can you imagine being impaled on a sharpened pole? I cannot think of a worse way to go. This was all recorded in the book of the history of King Xerxes. I wonder if they killed them first or if they just put them up there like on a barbecue. Like, ow. I like this book. It's full of romance and drama and beauty treatments. Haman's plot against the Jews, Esther 3:1-15. Sometime later, King Xerxes promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, over all the other nobles, making him the most powerful official in the empire. All the king's officials would bow down before Haman to show him respect whenever he passed by, for so the king had commanded. But Mordecai refused to bow down or show him respect. Then the palace officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, "Why are you disobeying the king's command?" They spoke to him day after day, but still he refused to comply with the order. So they spoke to Haman about this to see if he would tolerate Mordecai's conduct, since Mordecai had told them he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not bow down or show him respect, he was filled with rage. He had learned of Mordecai's nationality, so he decided it was not enough to lay hands on Mordecai alone. Instead, he looked for a way to destroy all the Jews throughout the entire empire of Xerxes. So in the month of April, during the 12th year of King Xerxes' reign, lots were cast in Haman's presence. The lots were called Purim, to determine the best day and month to take action, and the day selected was March 7th, nearly a year later. Then Haman approached King Xerxes and said, "There is a certain race of people scattered throughout all the provinces of your empire who keep themselves separate from everyone else. Their laws are different from those of any other people, and they refuse to obey the laws of the king. So it is not in the king's interest to let them live. If it please the king, issue a decree that they would be destroyed, and I will give 10,000 large sacks of silver to the government administrators to be deposited in the royal treasury." The king agreed, confirming his decision by removing his signet ring from his finger and giving it to Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. The king said, "The money and the people are both yours to do as you see fit." So on April 17th, the king's secretaries were summoned, and a decree was written exactly as Haman dictated. It was sent to the king's highest officers, the governors of the respective provinces, and the nobles of each province in their own scripts and languages. The decree was written in the name of King Xerxes and sealed with the king's signet ring. Dispatches were sent by swift messenger into all the provinces of the empire, giving the order that all the Jews, young and old, including women and children, must be killed, slaughtered, and annihilated on a single day. This was scheduled to happen on March 7th of the next year. The property of the Jews would be given to those who killed them. A copy of this decree was issued as a law in every province and proclaimed to all people so that they would be ready to do their duty on the appointed day. At the king's command, the decree went out by swift messengers, and it was also proclaimed in the fortress of Susa. Then the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa fell into confusion. Mordecai requests Esther's help. Esther 4, 1-17. When Mordecai learned about all that had been done, he tore his clothes and put on burlap and ashes and went out into the city, crying with a loud and bitter wail. He went as far as the gate of the palace, for no one was allowed to enter the palace gate while wearing clothes of mourning. And as the news of the king's decree reached all the provinces, there was great mourning among the Jews. They fasted, wept, and wailed, and many people lay in burlap and ashes. When Queen Esther's maids and the eunuchs came to her and told her about Mordecai, she was deeply distressed. She sent clothing to him to replace the burlap, but he refused it. Then Esther sent for Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, who had been appointed to her as attendant. She ordered him to go to Mordecai and find out what was troubling him and why he was in mourning. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the square in front of the palace gate. Mordecai told him the whole story, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai gave Hathach a copy of the decree issued in Susa that called for the death of all Jews. He asked Hathach to show it to Esther and explain the situation to her. He also asked Hathach to direct her to go to the king to beg for mercy and plead for her people. So Hathach returned to Esther with Mordecai's message. Then Esther told Hathach to go back and relay this message to Mordecai. All the king's officials and even the people in the provinces know that anyone who appears before the king in his inner court without being invited is doomed to die, unless the king holds out his gold scepter. And the king has not called for me to come to him for 30 days. So Hathach gave Esther's message to Mordecai. Mordecai sent this reply to Esther: Don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you will escape when all the other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for all the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this? Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai: Go and gather together all the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, day or night. My maids and I will do the same. And then, though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. If I must die, I must die. So Mordecai went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him. Is this not the greatest book in the whole Bible? It's such a great, I love it. I love the revenge and I just love it. I just love the book of Esther. Esther is a tough cookie to, like, I want to stand up for what I believe in the same way Esther does. Like, if I die, I die. I want to be like Esther. I mean, I don't want to die, but you know what I'm saying. I love Esther. All right, girls. Well, again, sorry I'm so late. It's almost noon. I gotta clean the Traeger. It's been dirty for 2 days. I didn't take the time to clean it after I cooked last, and it's filthy, gross, disgusting. So I really need to clean it this morning, but it's beautiful weather out here, so I guess it's a good time now as any to do it. So I love you, girls. Thanks for dropping in this morning. Let's go ahead and end in prayer. God, our Father, we thank you for meeting us here today, for the reading of your word. Thank you for your word and the promises within each and every one of the pages and the picture of your love and compassion on your people. God, I lift each and every woman up to you here today for all that they may be going through, the struggles and difficulties and worries and fears that each one of us face each day, and some of us going through difficult times. And God, I just ask for your strength for each and every woman here, for your reminders of your mercy throughout today. God, as we go through this day, help us to remain focused on our goals, of honoring you with our body, healing our body, strengthening our body to be better servants of you, our God. In your precious name, amen. All right, sweet girls. Thanks for joining me. I love you all. I hope you have a fabulous Sunday, and I'll be back tomorrow at the normal time because I have the gym tomorrow. So I will actually get out of bed. As late as I slept today, I can already tell I'm going to need a nap. I don't know. I'm like wore down, and I've only done one of my upcoming 4 trips. I've only got one under my belt, and I'm already wore out. I need to get it together because the next 3 weeks, starting next Monday, are going to be insanity. So I need to get myself together. That's why I'm sleeping now, because I know I'm not going to do much over the next couple of weeks. All right, girls.